I was being punished by my client's cheating wife. As I sat there listening to a potential client with the pretentious name of Tobias Richmond von Beersvoort Wall Rob speak passionately, I was beginning to pass out from boredom when suddenly a two-word phrase and a photograph brought me back to reality. The phrase sounded like a substantial bonus, and the photograph was of one of the most intriguing women I had ever seen in my life. My name is Patrick Drake. No, not Paul Drake, although I was a Perry Mason fan as a kid, and I'm a highly paid private investigator. I'm not one of those fleabag, barely able to follow through on a case, cowards you see on trashy TV shows. I wear $2,000 suits, unless I'm incognito, get a $100 haircut, and belong to a swanky country club. I got my professional skills working as a detective for the NYPD, affiliated with Scotland Yard, and had the best solve rate of any detective in the history of any major metropolitan police force in the United States. At the age of 40, I retired and opened my own high-profile practice. I am proud to be the highest-paid private investigator in the country, at least that I know of. I have a staff of 20, but I always take on the most difficult cases. Once I was awakened from my lethargy by the aforementioned phrase and photograph, I cut to the chase. I don't normally do domestic investigations, which is euphuism for investigating a cheating spouse, but I can tell that you are a cultured man and are in a predicament. Allow me to ask some pointed questions. Please go ahead. Toby, as I shall call him only to his face, replied, crossing his legs like an ancient duke or some member of the royal family. First, tell me about the woman in the picture. I assume that's your wife, I said, looking at the picture and then looking Toby in the eye. The woman in the picture wasn't the most beautiful person I'd ever seen, but she was simply adorable. She was dressed in a stylish business suit with an unnecessarily short skirt, without a single hair or particle of makeup. However, the blouse and jacket could not hide her seemingly huge mammary glands. Her legs looked sculpted, and her expression was confident and superior. But what was most striking were her eyes. They were the closest thing to Weinman blue I had ever seen outside of inorganic crystals, the most intense blue color known. Priscilla, of course she had to have an arrogant name, is a very intelligent and accomplished woman. She has been rich most of her life, not as rich as me, but very rich. She's 35 years old, has a master's degree in economics from Oxford, and a bachelor's degree in finance from MIT. Although she doesn't need to work, because both she and I are so rich, she insists on working as a consultant for a company of which she is a major partner, dealing with the problems of corporations and institutions in financial distress. Why did you marry her? I cut to the chase. Because of her physical beauty, her intelligence, and because she is the most prim and proper person I have ever met in my life. She never uses coarse language, is stoic in interpersonal relationships, never wears any clothing, even for exercise, which she does at least 5 times a week. That doesn't have a single crease on it, and never even sweats. She glows, Toby replied. His eyes seemed to light up as he spoke. Why do you suspect she's cheating? I can't articulate exactly. My ancestors were known for having a keen sixth sense, and there have been several situations in my life that have led me to believe that I have inherited that sixth sense. However, I'd say the main reason is that over the past 2 years she's gone from being a great, albeit completely proper mistress to being as sexy as the best expensive call girls I used to hire before I met her, Toby replied, blushing after his last statement. I chuckled to myself. Most guys would accept the fact that their wife is hotter than a firecracker and not worry about the background. But I guess when you have a social status like Toby, you have to be concerned. I told him, okay, give me everything you know about her schedule, a few more pictures of her, a list of her friends and places she visits, even if she doesn't have a schedule. I have to give Toby credit. He came prepared. I got all the information I needed, some of which surprised me. The most surprising part was that he didn't know if she had any girlfriends. He named a few acquaintances, including a couple women she knew at the gym where she often worked out. but she never did anything with girlfriends. I finally gave him my fee and asked about the substantial bonus he indicated. The answer, $100,000, was music to my ears. He signed a contract that one of my secretaries had drawn up, gave me an advance of $40,000, gave me a phone number to call or text him, and we shook hands as he left my office. After Toby left, I called in my most experienced operatives, a man, William, and a woman, Cheryl, and assigned them to do the preliminary work. Since I wanted to make sure I got a bonus for the work, I was to work with the two of them, and anyone else we might bring into the investigation later to make sure we were successful. We immediately put a beacon on her car, placed small wireless remote-controlled cameras in various places she might have been if possible, and began checking in with her partners and co-workers at her office. I think I was overconfident in the first 2 weeks of the investigation. Either myself or one of my experienced operatives followed Priscilla everywhere. She was always dressed very motley, though quite decently, when she went to the office or to clients, including often wearing a distinctive hat and sunglasses. She was so easy to follow that I became careless. It wasn't until the end of the second week, when I followed her from her office to a client's office, that I realized my mistake. And I got a good look at the woman who had gone from Priscilla's office to the client's office, as I had assumed she would. Although she was almost the same size and figure as Priscilla, although not as lush in the chest area and wearing exactly the same clothes, it was not Priscilla. This meant that the work of the last 2 weeks had been practically useless, as we had followed her doppelganger several times rather than herself. If Priscilla was using the services of a doppelganger, it made her activities highly suspicious. Although for the first 2 weeks we didn't notice anything objectionable, now it was pointless. She could be making love to an entire soccer team for all we knew. Once we learned of Priscilla's doppelganger scheme, we tried to break into her office. We bribed the guy who maintained the plants and the woman who maintained the huge aquarium in the reception area to put on and set up cameras. I had the staff dress up as messengers and tried everything we could think of. I know that the cameras, at least the ones that were installed, are not legal, but I made sure I had the opportunity to deny my guilt. The cameras didn't really help much, and in some ways they even hurt. They didn't help because I didn't see anything suspicious in Priscilla's office, although there were a few men in her private office who were notable for their looks and attractiveness. They had all the hallmarks of real customers of her company, though, especially in the way they were treated by the staff. One day, a guy from the plant department was able to peek into her private office, and it was as you'd expect a high-end office to be, except for a massive side door that was not accounted for on the floor plan we got, stolen, from the architect who designed it. Priscilla was always prim and proper. After a while, however, it began to seem that her only opportunities for shenanigans came either when she was traveling, in her private office, which is unlikely, or at the fitness club on the first floor of the office building, where she went every day when her double left the building at the same time as herself. The worst thing the cameras did was cause me to have the reaction I had from seeing Priscilla all the time. She may have been a prim and proper fool, but there was a kind of surliness about her that, at least to me, was irresistible. It's not good when you dream you're having sex with the subject of an investigation involving a cheating spouse. I bought a membership to a fancy fitness club that Priscilla went to, and using what I thought was a good disguise, it had always worked before, I went there to watch her for about a third of the time she was at the fitness club. I also had to buy season tickets for my operatives Cheryl and William, who were working with me on Project Priscilla, because even with my disguise, I didn't want to go there every day, and watching each of us for a third of the time was going to allow us to witness almost everything. Half the time that Priscilla went to her health club, she worked out vigorously for about 45 minutes. It was easy to see how she maintained a strong body, considering how hard she worked, but then seemed to disappear for another hour and 10 minutes. Then, after taking a shower, she would return to her office. Despite our best efforts, the three of us were able to determine that there was likely a secluded, usually inaccessible corner of the fitness club where she would disappear to. If Priscilla did have a love affair during that unaccounted-for hour, it was difficult to determine with whom. There were a lot of guys in the fitness club who were sneaking glances at Priscilla. She stood out with her rumpled workout clothes and large breasts. There were other stout women in the club, but not in rumpled workout clothes or with breasts as large as hers. However, there was no sign of her disappearing with any particular guy, although there was one guy that Cheryl thought might be promising. The guy Cheryl pointed out to us, we investigated. His name was Alan Voorhees. He was tall, strong, good-looking, and wealthy, especially for such a young man. As the investigation revealed, 8 years younger than Priscilla. He and Priscilla never socialized, but often disappeared within 5 minutes of each other, and Alan was the only man near Priscilla who didn't at least look at her. While other women looked at Alan, Priscilla never did. After about 6 weeks of watching Priscilla at the health club, one day I decided I had hit the mark. I stealthily moved to a part of the club that was hard to find, and where the regular members didn't go, shortly after Priscilla and Alan had committed an act of disappearance. I heard grunts and groans coming from what turned out to be a room behind a hidden panel that was actually a door. I cautiously opened it, filming with a camouflaged camera. I caught about 10 seconds of lovemaking going on in there, but it wasn't Priscilla and Alan. It was another man and woman I'd seen at the health club before. Never together, though. Once a week, I called the phone number Toby had given me and reported everything I observed, although at the end of each conversation, I honestly reported that we had no evidence that she was cheating or acting in any way other than rank and proper all the time. After the first 2 weeks of watching her at the fitness club, I traveled to Pittsburgh when Priscilla went there on business. In Pittsburgh, she most likely met a wealthy man at the same hotel. However, both of them were very cunning and dodgy, and despite my best efforts and even stalking her room all night, I was never able to get any real evidence. A few weeks after I stumbled across yet another man and woman having sex at the health club, Priscilla was out of town again on business, this time in Boston. By this point, I had been investigating for months, and despite my overconfidence, or maybe overconfidence, was still zipping around. I, too, traveled to Boston on a different flight and changed clothes again and checked into the same hotel as Priscilla. I was a little surprised when, upon checking in, the porter said, "We have a special room for you, Mr. Drake." I wasn't making my own travel arrangements, but my travel specialist doesn't usually make special requests, and I was about to ask about it when there was some confusion, which was handled by another employee at the front desk, and my clerk stepped away for a minute to help. When she returned, it slipped my mind to ask what this special room was. That evening, I carefully, surreptitiously watched Priscilla. That is, I thought I did. In light of what happened, I think I actually wasn't. While Priscilla was acting suspiciously, I saw her enter the hotel elevator alone and stop on the floor where her room was located. I made as much investigation as I could by going up to the same floor and checking the small wireless camera I had hidden on her floor. And after reviewing the camera footage, I saw her enter her room. As I slowly walked past her room, I heard the TV on in her room. Since the camera battery was still running for another 8 hours, it would let me know if she had left her room during the night, so I went to my room to shower, get some sleep, and then get up and change. My room was the last room at the end of the hallway, a floor below Priscilla's room, with the stairs right next to it, and the maintenance closet across from it. As I swiped the key on the reader of my room door, I felt a jab, someone pushed me, and before I could react, I was blown away. I woke up in the bed of my hotel room. The lights were on low, but bright enough to see that my arms and legs were tied to a very sturdy bed frame. I also noticed that I had a slight headache. As soon as I pulled myself together and was fully awake, a woman approached me with no clothes on and a smile on her face. A very attractive woman. I didn't immediately realize it was Priscilla, and her large drop breasts, sculpted hips, and slim waist made me admire her body. Priscilla was mouthing words with her lips, but she was silent. It struck me as odd. Not like being tied to a bed with no memory of how I got there, and having a hot woman approaching me wasn't odd enough. Next, Priscilla started having sex with me, and I liked it. Priscilla then walked around me, smiling and mouthing words, again without sound, as she untied first my legs and then my arms, kissing me on the lips after each release of restraints. I was about to ask her, "What just happened?" rubbing my wrists, when suddenly she pulled out a hypodermic needle, probably hidden under the mattress, and poked me in the arm. I tried to grab it, but what she injected me with had an almost instantaneous effect because I lost consciousness. An undetermined amount of time after the injection, I woke up with my head spinning, unclothed on a bed in a hotel room. After about a minute, I was able to sit up. I looked at the digital clock next to the bed. It was 9:28 a.m. I hoped it was the day after I entered my room and not a few days later, because given the way my head felt, there was no way for me to know that. I probably would have thought I'd gotten drunk, passed out, and just imagined I was making love for the rest of my life if it weren't for the lash marks on my wrists and ankles. The fact that the cloth ties were still attached to the headboard and footboard of my room's bed. I took a shower to recover, including standing under absolutely freezing water for the last minute or so. After the water poured over me, I felt better, but there was still a vague feeling in my head. I got dressed, pulled out my phone, and confirmed, thankfully, that it was 10:17 a.m. on the morning of the day I entered my room, and not a few days later. I went to get the camera I'd planted in the hallway outside Priscilla's room, but it was gone. I went down to the lobby and asked for Priscilla and was told she had checked out of the hotel early that morning. I had breakfast, got on the next plane out of town, and pondered the whole time, more confused than a blind girl in a fish market. I got back to my office around 3 in the afternoon. I had a phone message from Tobias. I called him back. Not surprisingly, he wanted to know how my trip to Boston had gone. Of course, I didn't tell Toby what had happened in my hotel room, but gave him a general description of my actions, my observations of Priscilla, and my unfounded suspicions. In short, nothing new. I could tell that Toby was upset, as I was if I were him. I talked to my staff who were helping me on this case and told them we had to try harder. Cheryl sat in her car and followed Priscilla home from the office, perplexed as to why I hadn't told her what flight Priscilla was on, and Cheryl had missed Priscilla at the airport, leaving her unattended for hours. I returned home tired and discouraged, but at the same time periodically hallucinated about Priscilla having sex with me, which, to be honest with myself, should have led to the conclusion that it was the best sex of my life. After eating a microwave-cooked frozen pizza and a salad from the salad bar at the local grocery store, I checked my personal email. Besides emails from family and friends and the usual spam, one email caught my eye. "You're going to love reliving this memory, Patrick Drake detective," followed by 2 heart emoji and a kiss emoji. The body of the email read, "Reply as soon as you receive this and a text message will be sent to you. You should then call I sent a reply that simply wrote, "Got this email. What's going on?" 5 minutes after sending the reply email, I received a text message that read, "View this," attached a video, and the words, "After viewing the video, call the number that was sent to you." When I watched the video, I just lost my head. It showed Priscilla having sex with me. From the angle of the camera, from what Priscilla was saying, the sound was now commensurate with her words spoken during the lovemaking, and from what my voice that accompanied the video was saying. Even though I wasn't saying anything during the video, it was clear that anyone watching it would not only think that I was a willing participant, but that I had had sex with Priscilla before and had provided her husband, Toby, as I pejoratively referred to him in the video, with false information to cover up my affair with her. Although the sound of the videotape disturbed me greatly, apparently the sight of Priscilla's gorgeous body and memories of the best sex of my life triggered my attraction to her. I realized I was screwed and decided I'd better face the music right now, so I called the number provided. I tried to activate the record function on my phone, but every time I tried to activate it, there was an unusual sound in the handset and it wouldn't turn on, so I gave up. The female voice that answered on the second ring clearly belonged to the fateful Priscilla. "How nice of you to call Patrick Drake, Detective," she greeted wryly. "How did you do it, Priscilla?" asked I. "With a proud man like you, Patrick, it's easy to pull off," she grinned. Without revealing too many of my secrets, I prepared a special cocktail that included a fast-acting and harmless sedative and sildenafil, so that when you walked into your room, where I'd asked the porter to put you, right across from the janitor's closet with an easy-to-pick lock in which I was hiding, the rest, with the help of a friend, was easy. "But I never said anything to you, and you only mumbled words to me, but your video seems to have perfect audio with our voices," I complained. "Artificial intelligence can do wonders these days, Patrick," she hummed. "How did you manage to duplicate my voice?" I asked irritably. "From the calls you made to Tobias's phone, which he instructed you to report. No more questions now, Patrick. It's time to tell you what I want," she growled. "Here it comes, it started," I groaned to myself. "In the next 2 weeks or so, you're going to tell Tobias that you've found absolutely nothing to indicate that I'm having an affair with anyone but him, and that he's wasting his money on further investigation. Also, I don't want to see any more of your 2 little minions, Cheryl and William. I think that's their names. Furthermore, you are not to repeat this to anyone, ever. Understood?" "I believe there's an or else here, Priscilla." "Of course, Patrick, otherwise the video I sent you will be sent to Tobias, and he, knowing him, will sue you, and your reputation will be ruined, and your decent 6-figure income every month will be reduced to 0. After some delay, I said, "Maybe I can convince him that it was a setup and that you used peace intelligence." Priscilla laughed. "Good luck with that. Now say okay, and I'll move on to the next and far more desirable topic of discussion for you. Or say anything else but okay, and the video will be sent to Tobias immediately." I sighed, figuring out what the next topic might be, and then said, "Okay, you win." "Great. The contract you need to sign to mark our deal is between your front door and the screen door. Take it, sign it, and send it immediately to the email address you got my number from." She smiled over the phone. "Why?" I thought to myself, but obediently got up, found a 9 by 12-inch manila envelope by the front door, and opened it. I told Priscilla I would read the contract, and I did. It was a straight quid pro quo. "I'm not sure this is legal, Priscilla," I said. "It might be against public policy. My $1,500 an hour lawyer tells me it's perfectly legal. Now sign it and email it to me, and I'll be on the phone anxiously awaiting your return." I did as requested and picked up the phone again 5 minutes later. "Did you get it, Priscilla?" "Yes, I got it, Patrick. You must have a good scanner. It's very legible. Now, do you want to hear what happens next?" "I can't wait." I waved it away. "I've enjoyed a loving relationship with you, Patrick, so much so that I'm ready to add you as one of my clients. If you're interested, I'll send you a number to call. It's an untraceable phone number that I change periodically. And for only $1,600 plus expenses, you can enjoy my company for an hour, and for 2 hours at a reduced rate of $3,100. I had to raise the rate when my blood-sucking lawyer did, as any of my clients would agree that my time is more valuable than his, she laughed. I was stunned. You're a cheater? But you're already rich? A very unfortunate use of the I word that you will never use towards me again, or you will be crossed off my list, Patrick. And while I don't owe you an explanation, I have nothing to hide, so I'll give you one. I am already rich. Filthy rich, in fact. However, I do have a medical condition that the last of the many times I tried to diagnose it, the answer was no clearer than the first time. The best I can determine is that my limbic system and the preoptic area of the anterior medial hypothalamus of my brain have hitherto unrecognized psychoneuroendocrine mechanisms. These mechanisms cause me to achieve maximum pleasure only when I am paid for sex. All of my clients can afford my rates, love to make love to me, and I have blackmail material on them so they will never outbid me, so to speak. With the phone number I email, you can contact me to enjoy my skills, and I'll be even better than I was in Boston. Be sure to call ahead of time, though. I'm in high demand. At this point, she cut the conversation short. I didn't understand a word of her explanation, but agreed with her conclusion that she only had optimal sex when she was paid $1,600 an hour. A minute after she ended the conversation, an email arrived on my computer. When I opened it, it contained only a phone number and a heart emoticon. Since I had no choice 18 days after my phone conversation with Priscilla, I personally provided Toby with my final report, with the conclusion that she wasn't cheating on him and that he was wasting his time investigating further. He actually looked pleased, smiled broadly, and shook my hand firmly. Showing that I still had some remorse, I declined his prize, saying, "I haven't found anything, and the prize will only come if I do," which was not really what we had agreed on, but it did partly ease my conscience. 2 days after meeting Toby, I met Priscilla at a local hotel for lunch. I thought my first time with her was the best sex I'd ever had. She proved me wrong. I left the $3,100 hotel room, plus room rate, poor, completely drunk, in better condition than any man has a right to be or than I thought possible. My mind was too full of endorphins to realize what a wimp I had become, all because I had shown pride. The end! Subscribe to my channel. Thank you.